We want more in life, but you know what? We won't go for it because we're attached to what we have. What are you attached to? Many times we think to let go of an attachment, we have to give something up. We think about what something's going to cost as opposed to what it could potentially create for us. Poor people look at what something cost them. Rich people look at what something will do for them. We're going to create attachments. That's what we do. But what we want to do is we want to attach to our ideals of what experience of life we want to create. The ordinary person is attached to other people. The spiritual warrior is attached to infinity. And that means the infiniteness of our lives. You're listening to the Transform Your Life from the Inside Out podcast. This episode is part 2 of what I started last week in the Conversations with a Sorcerer series. This episode is titled Escaping Your Biggest Enemy, Part 2. So if you recall in the last episode, and if you've not listened to that, go back, whatever you do, and listen to the last episode. But we talked about how attachments literally are your biggest enemy, how they steal from you, how they rob life from you. And in this episode, we're going to continue the conversation. Keep listening. Okay, so we've talked about attachments in the last episode. We're going to pick up here. And where I stopped in the last episode was the thought that we have to lose our attachments to all people, places, and things. And we have to recognize and work from, and we have to absorb and adopt the truism that everything in life is temporary. And when we can fully embrace that concept that nothing is permanent, everything is temporary, and when we can live from that context, we can live from that place, take a deep breath, because your life's going to become a lot easier. Speaking of attachment, I mentioned fear in the last episode. Many people don't even recognize they are attached to the concept of being in fear. So what I'm going to do from this point in this episode is I'm going to hop around. I'm going to jump around a bit, and I'm going to bring some points to you about attachment that I request you ponder. And ponder these deeply. Remember, the Buddha, your attachments are your greatest cause of suffering. And what I want to help you do is remove your suffering from your life. Now, as I said in the last episode, many times we attach to things we currently have. And the challenge with that, I've been there, I've done that. And the challenge with that is that it prevents us from exploring or taking action on what we could have. I'll give you 2 examples here. Good friend of mine. His name is Harry. I've not seen him in a lot of years. And even though I've not seen him in a lot of years, we're still good friends. And, I'm not even sure what he's doing these days. But he was talking about how bad his marriage was. But he loved his wife. But he talked about how bad it is. But he loved his wife. How bad it is. But he loved his wife. And he had a merry-go-round going on. Anyway, I coached him through it. We worked through it. But you know what? He was attached to the idea of being in the relationship with this particular woman. What happened is he eventually got out of the relationship. He met a new woman, and I talked to him for 2, 3, 4, 5 years after he met her. And it's been probably 10 years since I've talked to him. And he's like, Jim, I never recognized I could be so happy. I never recognized a relationship could be so loving and rewarding and so fulfilling as it is with his new wife. But notice the years prior, he was attached to the relationship. So what relationships are you attached to because of some meaning you're putting on them? Oh, they're a relative. Oh, they're my father. Oh, they're a husband. Oh, they're a wife, whatever it might be for you. Think about, what are my attachments? Now, in psychology, many times they call that codependency, also an attachment. Now, in the last episode, I talked about losing $750 million. In 2009, Don Javier was sitting in my living room. And I'll tell you basically verbatim what he said to all of us in the living room that night. He said, "Hey guys, I'm seeing something, and it's a digital coin. It's called Bitcoin. And all of you guys should invest a little money into it." And he said to all of us, he goes, don't invest a lot. What if each of you only, and there's about 20 of us in the room. And he said, what if each of you invested $1,000 into this Bitcoin and then just hang on to it? He goes, now here's why I didn't invest. He said, it's brand new and you could lose your $1,000. Well, it's 20 something years later, 24 years later, and that $1,000 of Bitcoin, to me, had I invested $1,000 when I was told in 2009, would be worth something like $750 million. I could take care of a hell of a lot of dogs and cats and animals, like I talked about in the last episode, had I invested that money. But I was attached. And I was attached to a couple of different things. But my whole point is and was, I was attached. What do your attachments cost you? We don't think about it in that kind of way because they're generally fear-based, but we don't think about what's the price tag on that cost. So many times, what we do, I'll give you an example. I'm not sure how I want to say this. And I just want to talk to you as candidly as I can, you and I just sitting across from each other. And I want to share things in ways that will resonate and make sense to you. But I'm going to use myself as an example. The Bitcoin would be an example. There are things that have been offered to me that would make my life better. And I didn't take advantage of that offer, even though it was a pretty air quote safe, secure offer. I didn't take advantage of that offer. And then I look at what it cost me to not take advantage of that offer. Now, where I want to go here is because I don't necessarily want to be promotional, but what I care about is helping you transform your life to live a better life. But I've seen this, no judgments. Many of you are attached to so much of your crap, you won't even let me help you live a better life. You'll listen to episode after episode after episode. I've heard people say they've listened to every episode 5 times. Yes, I've heard that. And they listen year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5, but they won't fricking give up their attachments to let me take them to the next level. And then they wonder why their life is not changing. But here's something we all experience. Many times we think to let go of an attachment, we have to give something up. Like, for example, when I didn't invest in Bitcoin, I thought I would have to give up $1,000. Now, my finances, I think about money much differently now than I did, 1,000 years, not 1,000, well, I guess 1,000 years ago too, but 25 years ago. But even 25 years ago, I had money. I was making 6 figures a year 25 years ago, but I was like, I don't know if I want to lose that $1,000. This could be risky, et cetera, blah, blah. But what did it cost me? So many times we're afraid to give up our attachments because we're afraid of what it is going to cost us. We think about what something's going to cost as opposed to what it could potentially create for us. Many times, a life example, and what I was just saying, is we think if we give up some money now, that's going to cost us to give up that much money or a certain amount of money. We might not get it back, therefore we've suffered a loss. But what people almost never look at, I heard a friend say many years ago, he's also a speaker, he said, and I don't like the way he said it, but I'm going to share the way that he said it because I don't think it's 100% accurate, but it's pretty damn accurate. He said, poor people look at what something cost them. Rich people look at what something will do for them. Think about that. So when you're evaluating something, do you think about what it will cost you? And then, as you're learning now, your attachments to what that cost might be? Or do you think about what it might do for you? But we're afraid about so many things. We're afraid to give up our current location where we live. The amount of people that I've worked with that want to move across the country, but they're afraid to give up, air quote, the attachment to the security they have of where they live, but they hate living where they live and they'd want a better quality of life somewhere else. Many times, as I've alluded to earlier, we're afraid to give up our attachment in our relationship. By the way, I've been there before. No judgment. I'm not tossing any stones. I have been there at different points in my life. I'm not there now. I have found that when I'm afraid to give up my attachment to a relationship, that relationship controls me and I have no power in that relationship. I must be, which is where we're going to wrap this podcast up with at the end of it, I must be in a place, no matter how much I love somebody, I can walk away from that relationship, or I can stand my ground and I can be me. And if I lose that person, I must be okay with that. Because if I'm afraid I will lose the person, I'm then attached to them, and that attachment costs me loss in terms of happiness and quality of life. You know, a simple metaphor. We want more in life. It's kind of akin to what I'm talking to. We want more in life, but you know what? We won't go for it because we're attached to what we have. Good friend of mine, he's a marketer, big time marketer. I've learned a lot from him. I've learned more from a guy named Rich Sheffrin, a friend of mine I've known for 25 years. I've learned more from him than anyone in business. And he and I were chatting one time, and he's like, you know, Jim, the problem with most people is they want to steal second base, but they won't take their foot off first base. If you're wanting more in life and you're not getting it, plain and simple, you've got your foot on first base and you won't take your foot off first base because you're attached to what first base is giving you. So the thing about attachment, to me, it's like a magnet, because what we attach to attaches to us. So as I said earlier, and I'm asking, what are you attached to? Think about that. Because see, then what we attach to also for most of us creates fear. And the fear is, I'm going to lose that thing. So where I want to go in this episode, a little different. I've laid the foundation at the beginning of this episode and the last. Where I want to go is this. We're going to create attachments. That's what we do. I think it's part of the species, part of what the species does. What you want to ask yourself is this. Okay, you want to say this because you say it already, but you're saying it now is, okay, Jim, I already know I attach to things. But what we want to do is we want to attach to our ideals of what experience of life we want to create. Basically, let me break that down. We want to attach to the good shit we can have in life, not the bad shit. There, I've said it pretty simply. We want to attach to things that are going to empower us. We want to attach to things that are going to build us. We want to attach to things that are going to support us, not things that are going to suck the life out of us. In my opinion, the best attachment would be this phrase. I can be, and I can do, and I can have anything I want in my life when I let go of my attachments. Think about that. That's a great phrase to attach to, and even though it sounds like a conundrum, it's a very powerful place to work from. I can be and do and have anything I want in my life when I let go of my attachments, because like the last episode, like I said, it's the attachments that keep you away from what you want to create in life. What ideals are you attached to? Now think about this. Many people have never thought about it in this way. They're attached to the ideals of, are you ready? They're attached to the ideals regarding money of, oh, someone like me could never have anything like that. I could never be a millionaire. I could never buy that brand new car. I could never afford a house like that. Make no mistake, that is an attachment. And as I said in the last episode, those attachments keep you away from what you want in life. Those attachments are your, air quote, your mental structures. Don Javier was at the house a couple of years ago. I've mentioned this quote on the podcast before. And he said something along the lines of, it's our structures that keep us attached, meaning how we have the world structured. I'd mentioned a hypnotist friend earlier. He's a hypnotist, a very well-known hypnotist, Vegas, all this kind of mumbo-jumbo stuff. And I heard him say one time, somebody was asking him, is it easy to get people into hypnosis? And he said, no, is it hard to get somebody into hypnosis? And he said, no, it's easy to get somebody into hypnosis. It's hard to get them out of hypnosis. Now, based upon what we're talking about, it's hard to get people out of their hypnotized attachment to everything that keeps them trapped. Money's hard to come by. I could never have anything like that. People like me don't have things like that. I've heard people say, people that look like me don't have things like that. People who look like me, other people don't listen to. So your attachment's in a different way. Let's say it this way, it might hit home. Whatever you believe is what you are attached to. Another quote from Don Javier many, many decades ago, he said this to me. I love the phrase, the more you believe, the more you have to defend. Same thing about attachments, a little different though, even though I said it's the same thing. What you attach to, you have to defend. You attach to ideals, you have to defend that. You attach to not having money. People will actually attach to that and they will defend why they can't have money. You know, I know you've heard the phrase before, near-death experience. And as I understand, and I was told, I was right on the precipice of that. And I've talked to people that have had near-death experiences. And what they learned, that I learned simultaneously when I had the stroke and heart failure, is when people have near-death experiences, they will tell you, because my mom had one. My mom that raised me, my adopted mother, she literally died on the operating table when she was having brain surgery. And she said to me afterwards, she said, I love you kids, but I didn't want to come back. I didn't want to leave where I was. And I've heard many people say that. Why? Because they understand this physical life, you're attaching to your own life. This physical life you're living in right now that many of you, if not all of you, have attached to is, here's the word again, the big T word, temporary. It's temporary, but people attach to what is temporary, trying to make temporary permanent, which is the attachment which causes the suffering. Look at politics right now. Everything that people are attaching to, this side or that side, and attaching to all the pain of the ideals of that side because it's not my side, and everybody on that side attaching to all their ideals of pain at people on the other side win the election. It's human freaking nonsense. It's all ego and it's all attachment. So your biggest fear probably revolves around loss, as I said earlier, of what you now have, and you're afraid to lose what you now have, even though, I've said before, you don't own what you now have. You're simply borrowing it while you're here on this planet. Ponder that. Everything you have, I don't care if you've got 100 Porsches or, Rajneesh was an example. What was his name? Osho also. Rajneesh and Osho was his name. By the way, I asked Don Javier about him, and Don Javier's like, the guy's a charlatan. Believe what you want, don't believe what you want. Anyway, that's up to you. But the guy had like 100 Rolls Royces. Do you think those are serving him today when he's no longer on the planet? What you attach to controls you and brings misery to you in some kind of way. What we must do is start letting go of attachment. Now, I'm going to tell you in my personal experience, I'm not an alcoholic. I've never had to go through alcoholic detox, but I hear it's pretty painful. And what I have found is letting go of attachment can be a real bitch because it can be scary. Oh my gosh, this is what I know of the world. Here's how I have my structure. Here's how I have my world organized. And if I let go of this, then what's tomorrow going to look like? Now, I'm in pain, I'm in fear because I don't want to let go of my attachments. But the reality is, we must do it anyway. And something that helped me, again, Don Javier said to me many years, actually it was Don Juan, who was Don Javier's mentor, said to me, the ordinary man is attached to other men. The spiritual warrior is attached to infinity. Think about attachment. Think about attachment. The ordinary man is attached to other men, and of course women too. The ordinary person, here we go. I'm gonna actually make Don Juan from 25 years ago. I'm going to make him politically correct now. The ordinary person is attached to other people. The spiritual warrior is attached to infinity. And that means the infiniteness of our lives. So our key is non-attachment. Something Don Juan said to me many years ago, and this is going to be your work, okay? It took me a lot of years to get my mind around this. I believe it was around 1997 or so. Don Juan said to me, and he calls me Jaimito, which is young James in Spanish. And I was young in this lifetime back then, 30 years ago. And he said, Jaimito, you need to learn to care about everything and in the same moment give a damn about nothing. Think about that as it might apply to your own life. You need to care about everything and simultaneously give a damn about nothing. That means you care and you do not care. That right there, that little bitty sliver in the middle between caring and not caring is your non-attachment space. To simplify that, you need to be okay with not having. You need to be okay with being alone, even if you don't want to be alone. You need to be okay without having someone in your life, even if you want them in your life. You need to be okay if you're doing a business launch online, of it working or not working. Now, your intention is you do create, you do manifest, you do materialize these things. However, non-attachment, which actually makes them show up quicker for you, that's your benefit. When you're not attached, what you're intending shows up 100 times quicker. I'll say it again. When you're not attached to an outcome, what you're intending will show up and manifest 100 times quicker. So, in the fancy way, Don Juan, give a damn about everything, or give a damn, it's been 30 years since he said it, but basically it was care about everything and not care about everything. But he did say damn. You need to learn to give a damn about everything and in the same moment, not give a damn about anything. That's the balance. That right there is the balance between ego and spirit. That, not work-life balance nonsense. That what I'm sharing right now is the balance between the container and the ego and the body and the human identity and the soul, is letting them work together and co-create in that space of balance. Maybe a little scary to do. Maybe a little hard to do. Like I said, it's like a detox to some degree because we're so used to being attached. But in that place, when we learn to care and not care at the same time, we keep going back to, but I do care, but I do care, but I do care. Trust me, I've been there. But I want it, no. This is my intention. If it happens, what a blessing. And that's wonderful, that's great. And if it doesn't happen, that's also wonderful, and that's great. My intention is to manifest and create XYZ, and then be in that space and let it go and be surprised at how quickly this does show up for you. So your transformational takeaway is this. I'm going to paraphrase, okay? Don 1 is what I said earlier, but to make it simple, your transformational takeaway is to be 100% okay with having and simultaneously, in the exact moment, okay with not having. And when we live in this space, that is spiritual evolution. Okay, throwing myself under the bus, talking about attachment, is hopefully what I said in this episode and the last one, they made sense to you. What I mean by that is obviously I hope they resonate and they make sense. But my attachment to creating these episodes was I was trying to think through how to weave all this together in a way that would be cogent and make sense to you. So again, I was attaching because I want you to get value from these episodes. That in itself is an attachment. So as I said, we're going to have attachments. Pick attachments that serve us. Quick request, please, if you would. If you enjoyed this episode, if you would, please go to iTunes and leave a 5-star review. Anything less than that's not going to help me. I would really appreciate that. That's Einie in action. And tell people you know about this podcast. I would be very grateful if you would do that to return some energy back to me. And thank you for the blessing of letting me serve you. Stay well, and I'll catch you over on another episode. Bye-bye.